I've been looking for this all my life.
Hey everyone, Mr. DVB here. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the fifth and final film in the Indiana Jones franchise, which has always been one of my favorite series out there. Ever since I was 3 or 4 years old, whenever I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark for the first time, this has just been one of my absolute favorite movie franchises to watch. I love the character, I love the adventure, the action. It's just so memorable and so exciting, and so I was naturally excited for a fifth and final entry with Harrison Ford playing this character. Even if the trailers didn't blow me away, just the idea of seeing this character on the big screen one last time excited me, because I saw Kingdom in theaters when I was 5.5 or however old I was, but I don't entirely remember that experience. So to me, this sort of felt like my first and final chance to get to witness this. And so I was looking forward to that. And coming out of the movie, I thought the film was decent. I didn't love it. I've got a lot of issues with it, but honestly, I sort of expected that going in, and I'm not too upset about that. I don't really know the best way to explain this, but the way I kind of viewed it was, I'm looking forward to seeing just the character one last time, even if the movie isn't great, as long as it doesn't do anything to like ruin the legacy of the character, if they make some like stupid decision or anything like that, then I'm fine if it's not that great. And they didn't do anything to ruin this character, so that's pretty much exactly how I felt about this film. I think it's decent, I think it's got plenty of issues, but I'm still just happy that it exists and that I get one last time to watch this character. But it doesn't feel like it does anything, like I said, that hurts the previous movies. This isn't like Rise of Skywalker that does stuff that to me hurts, Return of the Jedi or anything like that. This movie just, you can skip it if you want, right? You can just look at the third Indiana Jones, the last one, or the fourth one, or whatever your preference is, and that's completely fine. It doesn't do anything to hurt the rest of the series. So I wanted to get that out of the way because I feel like some people are going to say, this ruins the legacy of Indiana Jones, and it doesn't. So with that being said, let's talk about this film. I am taking this off because it's a little too hot. I'm also sunburnt. I also have a really annoying cold. I'm a total mess right now. It sucks, but such is life. So, Dial of Destiny. This movie takes place in 1969. Indiana Jones has, definitely aged a lot. He is in a world where everything around him has grown a lot faster than he has. He sort of feels left behind, not quite up to par with everything else, and he's sort of just done with his lot in life until his young, estranged goddaughter Helena shows up. She has this ancient Greek dial, and she is tangled up in this whole situation with a bunch of former Nazis who now work for NASA. So Indy is forced to tag along and join for one last adventure to stop them before they can do whatever it is that they are planning on doing. So let's start with the positives. Harrison Ford is great as always in this movie. This is a very different take on Indiana Jones. Like I said, he's older, he's grumpier, etc. And I feel like that's going to be an issue for some people, but I still think he gave an excellent performance. He totally nails it in the emotional department, because there are some moments in this movie where he does have to bring that emotion to the character, and I think he totally delivers in those moments. But like I said, tonally and everything like that, structure-wise, this feels so different from the other films in the franchise. It is sort of like Temple of Doom in that regard, where it just doesn't feel like any of the other Indiana Jones movies, right? Last Crusade feels a lot like Raiders, and Kingdom, while people may not like the decisions in the story, structurally it still feels very much so like an Indiana Jones movie. This feels so different, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing. It definitely left me feeling different about things than I normally would. I was kind of surprised by the direction they went in at certain times, and I never hated it, though. It just wasn't quite what you would have expected from an Indiana Jones film. And I think where my biggest issue with this movie comes in is the feel of it. I don't quite know how to explain it, but it sort of feels like it's just lacking something. It's lacking that thing that makes it special, that makes it memorable and exciting. That might be the lack of Spielberg. I don't know. Spielberg might have brought that to this franchise, because even if you don't like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which I know a ton of people don't, I personally do, I feel like that movie still has that excitement to it, especially in the first hour. I feel like it's got great pacing, and there's just always something exciting going on. Here, I felt like the movie definitely dragged at points. There were sections where I wasn't bored, but I just didn't think what was going on was particularly exciting. It didn't give me that Indiana Jones feel, and Indiana Jones as a character in this is sort of forced to tag along in this adventure. He doesn't have that excitement to him discovering all of these things. It doesn't feel like he's actually super engaged in the mystery of this artifact and everything like that. And so I don't know. There's a few decisions in this movie that I don't quite agree with, but like I said, at the end of the day, I do think this is still a satisfying conclusion for this character, and it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't do anything to hurt the franchise. So some people certainly will say it does. You know, the typical, you know, anti-Lucasfilm go woke, go broke crowd. They'll have plenty of things to say about this. They already have, but I it's all overdone. I don't think this movie does anything that actually hurts the series. So let's talk about the other characters. Helena Shaw, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridges. She's going to be a complaint for many people, I'm sure. She plays a very cocky, arrogant character. The banter between her and Indy, it's not like they particularly enjoy each other's presence. And again, I feel like it's a little overdone and some people are probably going to dislike that. I think she's going to get way more hate than is warranted because I still think she plays the role well. I just don't think it's necessarily a role that many people are going to love. It was similar to how Mutt and Indy kind of had their banter in the fourth film, but it's definitely dialed up here, no pun intended. And I've always loved Mutt. I think he's a great character, and I think, you know, I think this character of Helena is far less likable in my opinion. I didn't hate her, I just didn't particularly love her character, and she's definitely next to like maybe Willie, probably my least favorite companion to join Indy along his adventures in the movies. There's also this young kid named Teddy who is very much so kind of just a new version of Short Round. Again, not as likable as Short Round. He's not annoying or anything. He's just there. So most of the cast, I didn't particularly love the characters, but somebody who I did really like in this movie was Mads Mikkelsen as the villain. Mads Mikkelsen is always a great villain. Even if he's playing a sort of forgettable character, he still brings that like intimidating villainous factor to the role, such as, you know, his villain in Doctor Strange. And I think here he does a good job. The Indiana Jones films have never been strong for their villains. I don't think anybody in this franchise is noteworthy. Belloc is pretty forgettable in my opinion. Walter Donovan's forgettable. Mola Ram does next to nothing. And I think Mads was a bit more interesting than some of the other villains in this series. He's closer to somebody like Tote than he is any of the other villains. Not as memorable or Nazi-like as Tote, but I definitely liked his villain. And I think he was a good presence overall. I also liked Boyd Halbrook as kind of like this cocky CIA agent. He had this kind of like fun style to him that I liked. And then there's also the Dutch Giant, who is this huge guy in real life, who unfortunately was so wasted in this movie. Obviously, it would be unrealistic to have him and Indy have a fight, but the way that they just, you know, handle his character I thought was so disappointing, and he honestly had no need to be in this movie. Same thing goes for Antonio Banderas. He's here for like 2 minutes, and I don't know why they needed Antonio Banderas in that role. It's not a complaint of mine. I don't really give a shit. It's just kind of like, why is it Antonio Banderas if you're not going to really use him? I know this review sounds way more complainy than positive. It's just when it's a franchise you love, that's kind of what you focus on first, is like the dislike stuff. Well, so let's switch over to the positives for a second. Like I said, I do think the movie, I think it opens very strong. I think the first 20 to 30 minutes are great. The D.H. Harrison Ford, it doesn't look amazing. There's some times where his eyes or his mouth can look a little off, and it sounds like old Harrison Ford is voicing him, which is a little off-putting at first. I didn't really care that much. But I still think that opening sequence, it's still, you know, it's still exciting. It still has some good action. It's a classic Indiana Jones type scene with the big Nazi castle and the Nazi train. So I really enjoyed that stuff. I enjoyed catching up with Indy in the 60s. I think that was cool for the first little bit. It does slow down, like I said, for a while, but it picks up a little bit, I'd say, kind of towards the like middle of the movie or so, or the later half of the middle. And I genuinely enjoyed, like, the last hour and a bit of the movie I thought was quite enjoyable. I think there's some solid sequences. There's this whole third act thing, which I think is going to be divisive for some people. I don't think it's anywhere near as divisive as the aliens in Indiana Jones 4, but I do think some people will probably find the direction that the artifact and the, you know, properties that it has and things. I think some people will not quite like that element of the movie. I was fine with it. I think the way they introduce it is kind of cool. Again, I can't really say stuff without spoiling it, but I was fine with the way it went personally. Again, the Indiana Jones movies, like, they do have hearts being ripped out. They have the Ark melting people's faces, and, like, you know, they always have these things. So I can accept, you know, what this movie gave us. I just wish they spent a bit more time with the elements that are introduced in the third act. I feel like it could have taken up more like 40 minutes of the movie instead of like 10 or 15 minutes. But yeah, again, I can't really say a whole lot without diving into spoilers. And yeah, but by the end of the movie, I do think, we get a satisfying conclusion for this character. Is the movie necessary? No. Does it add a whole lot to the franchise? No. But again, it doesn't do anything that affects the previous movies. So even if I thought this movie itself was a little underwhelming, I'm not going to go back and watch, Raiders of the Lost Ark and think to myself, oh my god, like, look where this franchise went. It's not like Star Wars in that regard, right? Where Rise of Skywalker, Palpatine's alive, so now, like, Anakin's sacrifice in 6 feels kind of undermined, or force healing is introduced. Why didn't they use that millions of times previously in the series? This movie doesn't have anything like that. I'm not going to watch this. I'm not going to watch the other films in this franchise, and it's not going to affect my feelings towards those movies or anything like that. So that's why I didn't really care how the movie turned out, like if it was mediocre or not. Obviously, I wish it was like a 10 out of 10 amazing film. It wasn't, and that's fine. Again, some people are going to disagree with this and say, like, well, movies should be great. I agree. But again, I'm not, like, it's not a big deal to me that I didn't love this movie, right? Some people are going to shit on this film and say it's garbage and it ruins the franchise. Well, you clearly weren't a huge fan of the franchise in the first place if you're going to let this ruin it for you. So that's kind of all I really have to say. Again, I know this isn't the most positive review. I did like it. Like, I still enjoyed the movie. I'm still happy it exists. It still gave me, some kind of feeling. It just didn't live up to the other movies, and it's probably my least favorite in the franchise. And I know that's going to sound alarming. I have always loved Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, though. I think it's a super underrated movie that's just a lot of fun. Yes, it makes some decisions I don't love, but again, I just don't care. So there you have it, Dial of Destiny. If I had to give this movie a rating, I would give it a 7 out of 10. I think it has the potential to go down to a 6. I'm going to see it a couple of more times. But I'm happy it exists. I'm happy that we just got one last time with Indy, regardless of, the quality of the film. So there you have it, guys. Those are my thoughts on the film. I am going to be doing a ranking for the franchise sometime soon, so stay tuned for that as well. And then after that, it is going to be a while before I upload. I'll talk about, Christopher Nolan. I'll do a new ranking once I see Oppenheimer. But after that, it's going to be a little while before I'm back to YouTube. I am going to be working on a short film this summer. After I made my previous live stream, I actually had a coworker I work with who was older than me, who is actually into professional acting and has been in some movies. They told me that them and their whole acting group would love to be in a short film of mine. So I'm going to have some actual, like, legitimate actors with varying age ranges, not 16-year-olds pretending to be in their 30s. I'm going to have 30-year-olds and whatever. It's going to be a pretty cool thing, so look forward to something coming out sometime this year for me. And, yeah, in the meantime, I don't really have a finishing line. Yeehaw.